Dear Americans, the elections are coming, and some of you Americans might be concerned about a foreign government interfering with your elections. Now, some of you might think that Iran or Russia might hire a bunch of hackers in order to influence your elections. But what if I were to tell you influencing the elections is way easier and it's happening all the time, and there's a secret group that has been doing this for many years now? That's exactly what this video is about. In today's video, we look at the secret group of people that is spending billions of dollars in order to influence the next American president. We also look at how this impacts you as the American voter. And finally, we look at the party that is surprisingly benefiting a whole bunch from this influx of money. My name's Gary and I'm a Canadian, but you're watching The Breakdown Show. Let's get started. The year is 2020 and the American voters are getting ready to exercise their right to vote. And as we all know, they spoke loud and clear that their next president will be Biden. However, little do they know that they've already been influenced by a secret group of people. And this group has paid top dollar to get an American of their liking into the White House. This is not the first time the secret group has influenced the election. They've done this over the years many times. If anything, in the last decade or so, they have ramped up how much they're spending in order to win themselves a favorable president. And the year 2020 became the most expensive election year ever, with $14 billion being spent on both the presidential and the congressional races that specific year. This $14 billion is just the campaign spending that was spent on presidential and congressional elections. This does not cover any of the official costs of running the elections itself. That is a separate cost that's bared by the government. Even when you compare America with the rest of the countries, it far outpaces most countries. Britain's 2019 general elections only costed $68 million. During 2019, Australia spent half of what US political parties spent per person. India did spend $8 billion in 2019 elections, but keep in mind, India is the world's largest population. India is also a country that has also been spending more and more money every single year. And if you want me to make a video about that, do leave a comment down below, and that's a topic for a separate day. Let's continue with this video. American numbers are just ridiculously high and overshadow any democracy of the world. But one should ask, where is all this money being spent? What could they be really spending it on? When you look at the money that was spent in 2020, the expenses can be broken down into 6 main portions. And right away, 2 things stand out. First of all, $1.5 billion were spent just in fundraising for the campaigns. So, a certain portion of the money raised goes towards raising more money. And secondly, a vast majority of the $8.5 billion goes towards media expenses or marketing, in other words. That answers the where part of this question. Where are they spending all this money? Of course, on marketing. Now, the second question you might have is, why are they spending so much on marketing? The answer to that is quite simple. In today's day and age, they have to market themselves on social media, traditional media, radio, every single place they can put their face on, they will put their face on. And now, as much as you and I would like to believe that marketing doesn't influence our decisions, it does. Every time they put out an ad, a certain group of people gets converted. Now, this also leads to a bit of a cold war between the two groups. If the Democrats spend a X amount of money, the Republicans, in order to counter them, have to spend X plus 1, just slightly more to influence you more. And this becomes very crucial in swing states. They do. The amount you spend is very closely related to the chances of you winning an election. Here's a list of people who have won and their runner-ups. You see, the people who have won are marked in red, and they've overspent and spent more than their runner-ups. Just by looking at how red this paper is, it is a clear indicator that overspending means you're likely to win. Here's another graph that shows the likelihood of you winning over the last 20 years, depending on how much you spend. Once again, the more you spend, the more likely you're to win in both houses. Now, the part that should really worry you as the American voter is not how much they're spending. Of course it should, but not the biggest concern. It's where are they getting all this money from? After all, the politicians are not made of money and they're not just spending their own money. And the private individuals like you who might choose to donate their money is a very small portion that contributes towards the spending, maybe $1 billion or so, which is a big number, but not the main source. The rest of the 6 or 7 billions is coming from different individuals who are funding these politicians. And who are these individuals? Influence of money in American politics has been a concern for many years. For America, it's been a 2 steps forward and 3 steps backwards kind of a deal when dealing with this issue. You see, in 1904, New York State Department was investigating ties between big insurance firms and they accidentally found that New York Life Insurance Company had made a very generous donation of $48,000, that is $1.65 million in today's money, to Theodore Roosevelt, the president of the time. This came to be known as the campaign fund scandal, and people were outraged. And of course, back then the politicians had a spine. So soon after, a bill was introduced to ban all contributions by corporations to any political party for any political purpose. And talking about spines, you know who else doesn't have a spine? That is the capitalists, the people with money. Soon after, they found many ways to circumvent these laws and to get their money through and influence candidates. However, at the very least, there was no legal way of supporting these candidates with your money. Later on, the Smith-Connolly Act of 1943 was introduced, under which the labor unions were going to be prohibited as well, not just the corporations or other unions. However, this backfired. Two guys by the name of Philip Murray and Sidney Hillman decided that they have a workaround. You see, they decided that instead of giving their money directly to the campaigns, the unions will now pool their money and then give it to something called a Political Action Committee, which is also known by its street name of a PAC. And a PAC can legally spend money as long as it's quote-unquote independent expenses, legally called a message. And in this message, they can expressly advocate for the election or defeat of a candidate, as long as the message is not coordinated with a campaign. This opened the floodgates of money. The trade associations, non-profit organizations, corporations, everyone who wanted to could just open a PAC. The governments are slow and take time to act. But by 1974, they came up with another bill, this time limiting how much people or companies can contribute towards a PAC. They also introduced a disclosure agreement. The idea is the PACs can spend money, but they need to disclose who donated all this money, and this information needs to be shared with the voters. Once again, the donation limit was circumvented. The same group or corporation can now start multiple PACs instead of having one, which would reach its limit. And all these PACs can stay beneath the limit as long as enough money is contributed to them. The number of PACs went from 600 in 1970 to 4,000 by 2010. However, nothing compares to the sheer brutality of the assault that was carried out on the American voters' rights in 2010. That is the year when common sense and logic both vanished, and along with it vanished the voter rights. Let me set the scene for you. It is the January of 2008. Citizens United, a conservative group, is finalizing a documentary cynical of Hillary Clinton. And this is right before the Democratic primaries. And as per the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act, or BCRA, of 2002, Citizens United, or CU, could not release this within 30 days of the primary. And of course, they knew this, and they filed an injunction against the Federal Election Commission and their regulations in a lower court. Right away, they are declined. They are denied any permission to air this. However, they take this to the Supreme Court, claiming that these regulations are against their freedom of speech as an organization. And surprisingly, just with 2 hearings, the Supreme Court decided that Citizens United was right. In a controversial decision, Supreme Court basically allowed unlimited political expenditure, as long as the donors are disclosed. However, if you declare your organization a charity or a non-profit organization, you do not have to disclose the people who are donating to you. Basically, endless sums of money can be spent without ever disclosing any names. This gave birth to what is now known as super PACs and dark money. The year 2010 coincides with this increase in spending. Ever since, the amount of spending has just kept on rising. It's gone up. Now stay with me on this for a second. Let's say you're the Egyptian president and you want to win favors with, let's say, Trump. And you send $10 million to Trump. And it's very easy to do that by just putting it in a super PAC, where they don't have to disclose who I am, but the president sure knows who I am. And when the president's in the Oval Office and has to make certain decisions, guess whose side he's on? Of course, mine. Wait a minute, this is not a hyperbole? This actually happened. There's a very good video that's made by Johnny Harris. I'll leave a link in the description below, where the Egyptian president paid Trump a whole bunch of money in order to win favors. A study in 2011 found that politicians and presidents made themselves more available to people with money, donors who can potentially win them another election. At the same time, a 2016 study found that companies that spend towards fundraising tend to win more contracts. Now, from the very early days, Democrats have been opposed to this ruling, and Republicans have favored it. So one would assume that the Republicans are the ones that are benefiting more from all this money coming in. But surprisingly, the Democrats have been very good at utilizing this money. So One would assume that Republicans would be super opposed to it, but that's not the case. You see, even though the Democrats benefited from this money, when they came into office, they pushed a bill that would ban dark money. However, the Republicans didn't let it get through, which only tells me one thing. Both the parties are highly incentivized to either use the money or stay in the hopes that more money will be assigned to them through their donors or whatever the case may be. But the politicians don't have your best interest in mind. Freedom of speech is an invaluable asset of American democracy. It is what makes America great, not Biden or Trump. The reality of this whole decision that the Supreme Court made back in the day is it gives a certain group of people, a few individuals, a few companies, more freedom of speech than you do. And the worst part is the same group of people don't drive on the same roads you do. They just fly over them. Their kids don't go to the same schools as yours do. They go to private schools. That's it for this video. I hope you go and vote and you choose the right people who bring the right changes. As a Canadian, it doesn't affect me, but please go vote. Yeah? Okay, see you next time.